Today on the show, I've got 10 fun facts you probably never knew about Epcot. What's up? Welcome to episode 113 of the WDW Opinion podcast. My name is Connor Brown, and I am an author, blogger, travel agent, former Disney World cast member, and a Walt Disney World expert. And my passion is to help you plan for and daydream about your next perfect Walt Disney World vacation. If you are a new listener here, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here. Consider going back and checking out all of our previous episodes where we cover a wide variety of Disney-related topics. And you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. If you are a longtime listener, thanks for being here. Welcome back. If you continue to enjoy the show, please consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it as well. We have a fun one today, a lot of fun facts to discuss. But before we want to get into that, I want to do a quick reminder that if you aren't following us on social media, be sure to do so. You can follow us at WDW Opinion on Instagram and TikTok. And then you can go over to facebook.com/WDW Opinion to follow us there. We post a lot of fun content, a lot of news content, whole bunch of fun stuff. So be sure you're following us on social media. And if you're watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. For the last few episodes, we've been doing a video format of the podcast as well. If you're watching on YouTube, you can probably see my sweet shirt I'm wearing. It says Soarin', but in the Seinfeld font. So you have one of my favorite attractions in Soarin' and one of my favorite TV shows in Seinfeld combined. And I think it's a perfect shirt to wear out for this episode where we're going to talk about some fun facts from Epcot. What's the deal with Soarin'? What's the deal? That's my Seinfeld impression. So if you like it, there's more where that came from, for sure. And if you didn't like it, doesn't matter, because I'm going to keep doing it. If you aren't watching on YouTube and you want to see my sweet Seinfeld shirt, you can go over to wdwopinion.com/YouTube to watch the show, and you can also subscribe to us there on YouTube. We're going to be doing a lot more stuff on YouTube, so you definitely want to subscribe to our channel. wdwopinion.com/YouTube. Just a couple friendly reminders there. Now let's get to the good stuff, some Epcot fun facts. So a while back, I did an episode sharing 10 fun facts about Disney's Hollywood Studios, and then I did an episode about 10 fun facts about the Magic Kingdom. You can check out those episodes by going to episodes 109 and 110. You can just scroll down, I guess, in your feed, or go to wdwopinion.com/109 or /110 to listen to those episodes. I figured it was probably time to wrap up the series with a few more episodes about the other two remaining parks and do some fun facts about them as well. Those first two episodes, the Magic Kingdom and Hollywood Studios, I was in the theme parks doing it, so I'm not in the theme parks right now, as you can hear and see, but that doesn't matter because we have a ton of fun facts, and it's still going to be a lot of fun for this episode. And today, we're focusing on the second park that was built at Walt Disney World, the experimental prototype Community of Tomorrow, better known as Epcot. You know, Epcot's so interesting because in so many ways it's the most incredible theme park ever devised and created, but at the same time, it's the most unique theme park ever devised and created. There's nothing else like it in the world. You have these two elements that when you take them out of Epcot, they seems like that they would be kind of combative. You know, the promise of the future versus the reality of today, the promise of the future being Future World and the reality of the day being World Showcase. But yet Epcot intertwines them so well that it actually looks like a promise of the future in general, and that today is just where we start on that journey. You have the future world combined with the World Showcase element, and as of right now, Epcot is undergoing a massive refurbishment. And the Epcot that we know and love is soon going to be very different. But fear not, Opinioneers, because I think that the different that is going to come with this new Epcot is going to be for the better. I think the new enhancements are going to help the overall theme of the park, the promise of the future combined with the celebration of the current world today, whether that's the new attractions, the new shows, the new experiences, even the new pavilions. It's really going to help tell the story of what Epcot is going to be for the future. Epcot's the place where technology, curiosity, imagination, and improvement, they're all cornerstones of that theme park. And no attraction in particular focuses on those cornerstones better than Spaceship Earth. So here's a great Epcot fun fact about Spaceship Earth. Our first fun fact. The original narration script was penned by Fahrenheit 451 writer Ray Bradbury. A cool story about Ray Bradbury is very successful science fiction writer. Of course, Fahrenheit 451 probably his best known book. Ray Bradbury was going to Disneyland one day and he thought, I'm going to hate this place. It's going to be overly commercialized. It's going to be too wacky, too zany. It's not going to be good. I'm not going to like it. Well, he went there and he was blown away by it. He loved it. In fact, he loved it so much that he went home that night and he wrote a letter to Walt Disney, and it got delivered to Walt Disney. He said, Mr. Disney, you've created one of the most remarkable places on earth. I love it. And he and Walt Disney became good friends up until Walt passed away. And actually, Ray Bradbury became a consultant for what Epcot was going to be. But then as they started creating the park, he was brought on to help with a lot of things. And one big thing was writing the script for Spaceship Earth. And even though the script has been updated throughout the years to keep up with modern times, I think that first variation written by Ray Bradbury, it's very cool to know that he was behind it. But in fact, there have been 4 narration versions of the ride. The first narration was done by Vic Perrin, where he read Ray Bradbury's script. And that lasted from October 1st of 1982, Epcot's opening day, to May 25th of 1986. The next narration, which I think would have been really cool to hear, was Walter Cronkite, the famous newsman, the famous CBS newsman. His narration lasted from May 29th, 1986 to August 15th, 1994. And then the third iteration was very interesting. It was Jeremy Irons, Scar from The Lion King. I don't know how that would have played, listening to Scar take you through the history of communications would have been very, very, very interesting. His narration lasts November 23rd, 1994 to July 9th of 2007. And then, of course, we're in our current iteration, which has been running from February 15th, 2008 to the present, and that is with Dame Judi Dench. We know eventually there's going to be a new version coming of Spaceship Earth. Disney has said that there were actually plans to close Spaceship Earth, but COVID got in the way and delayed those sorts of things. So we're not sure when it's going to come, how long it's going to be down for, how different it's going to be from the original plans that they wanted to change it. We might get a new narrator, we might not. Time will tell. But I think it's super important to update this ride because you can't tell the story of communication and how it's evolving and all that with focusing on a singular moment in time. It's very dated now in a lot of ways because the last scene is, of course, that scene in the garage in California where there's the Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Steve Wozniak looking fella working on the personal computer. And of course, we've come so much from then. We have computers in our hands that we carry everywhere we go. So I think for an attraction that focuses on the future, that focuses on the history and the progress of communication, it is important to update it every now and then. So we'll see when this new version debuts, whenever it debuts, how far along they will have gotten. For fun fact number 2, let's stick with Spaceship Earth, shall we? And this is more about the structure of the golf ball itself. If you think about it, well, first off, it rains a lot in Florida. We all know that. Not breaking news. Not really even a fun fact. But it rains a lot in Florida. And with a sphere, you would think if it's raining and it comes down, rain comes down on the top of it, it would just cascade down the sides, go to the bottom, and then just dump right at the bottom. But if you've ever been caught in a rainstorm in Epcot, you know you can run under Spaceship Earth and, it won't be spewing water at you. That's actually intentional because the panels on Spaceship Earth were designed as an elaborate rainfall runoff system. Now, of course, you might get a little wet standing under it here or there, but the vast majority of it hits Spaceship Earth, gets collected into a channel of canals, and then is redirected and eventually ends up in World Showcase Lagoon, which is quite far away. I don't know how it gets there, but that sort of attention to detail is so good because people could have just said, listen, Imagineers, you're building the largest geodesic freestanding sphere in the world. It's remarkable. It's incredible. It's the centerpiece of the entrance of the park. You're putting an attraction in it with a complex ride system and animatronics and all this computer technology. That could have been enough. But they went a step further and wanted to make sure that the experience when it rained, because it does rain so much in Orlando, was enjoyable for guests as well. So they created that thing. And I think it's a super interesting fun fact and one I believe Disney should hype up more. Recycling rainwater is basically what they're doing, but channeling it and all that. So next time you're caught in a rainstorm in Epcot, and if you can make a run for it, head over to Spaceship Earth, wade underneath it, and you'll end up pretty dry. Pretty dry. Now, for fun fact number 3, it focuses on how there's plenty of hidden secrets within Spaceship Earth, within the attraction itself. For this fun fact, we're going to do a couple of my favorites. I'm going to point out just a few. The first one is when you get to the ancient Egypt scene, on your left, you see the gentleman pounding out the reeds to create papyrus to write on. And even though he doesn't actually hit the rock makes a sound like it's being hit. Incredible. Magic at work. But then the next couple feet, you see the ancient Egypt pharaoh. And it seems like he's dictating something. He's flailing his arms. He's talking, blah, 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 blah. There's a couple of scrolls there. And those scrolls are actual replicas of scrolls that one pharaoh wrote to some of his workers. So if you look closely, they're not word for word, but they are hieroglyphic for hieroglyphic. I'll be here all week. Thank you very much. You look at that, that's an actual note that one pharaoh wrote to his workers. So that's kind of cool. That's just going, attention to detail. Disney could have easily just made up random hieroglyphics, random animations and stuff, but they went all in and made sure they were real. Another interesting component, hidden secret in Spaceship Earth is when you go into the Rome is burning scene, and you know what? Unpopular WDW opinion here. A lot of people love the smell of the Rome burning scene. People have turned it into candles. People have made t-shirts about it. People sing sonnets about the smell of Rome is burning. My unpopular WDW opinion is that I hate it. Can't stand the smell of it. In fact, sometimes I plug my nose. So I go through the ride plugged like this. I still can enjoy it, but can't take the smell. Absolutely cannot take the smell. But if you can get past the smell and you look on the walls, you can see it looks like there's graffiti. And that's actual graffiti, meaning in 79 AD, Pompeii had a bit of a catastrophe. If you've heard about this one, Mount Vesuvius exploded and, rained terror on Pompeii. But it preserved Pompeii pretty perfectly. And when it was discovered, the archaeologists actually found graffiti written on walls, and that was ancient graffiti. That was graffiti written by the people of Pompeii. So even back then, those damn kids were vandalizing buildings. Like Bart Simpson, El Barto was here. Doesn't say that, but you get my drift. Disney saw this and they just did another replica and added it to the walls there. So there you go. Real life graffiti in the Rome is burning scene. Final hidden gem that I really like is when you go past the telegraph scene, and there's those two individuals there, and they're saying, stop, talking telegraph. That telegraph is actually typing out a real message in Morse code. The message that's being typed out is the 1869 telegraph that announces the golden spike has been put in place at Promontory Peak, which signified the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. So those three things, the fact that that telegraph is actually typing out a real message, the fact that you can see graffiti from Pompeii, the fact that those hieroglyphics are hieroglyphic for hieroglyphic, those are the details of what Disney gets so right. They could have just glossed over all that. The typewriter could have just been banging out random, useless nonsense. There couldn't be any details in the Rome is burning scene. They could have just made up a bunch of hieroglyphics. But that's the kind of attention to detail that we come to know and love from Disney. And it's so great that they've incorporated so much of it into, the real thesis attraction, I will say, of Epcot in Spaceship Earth. Of course, Spaceship Earth is not the only attraction in Epcot. There's plenty of other great ones. And fun fact number 4 brings us to the land. The land has several awesome attractions within it, but I first want to start on the outside of the building. Now, this is a fun fact that is actually a debunking of I guess you could call it a myth. We're mythbusters here today, mythbusters. When you walk up the ramp, you will see these fantastic mosaics on either side of the building. They're both pretty much identical. Right one, left one. They are identical. Now, as the story goes, these mosaics were done by a husband and wife artists. And the mosaics are totally identical on both sides except for one small difference. The story says that as you're entering the pavilion, on the right side of that mosaic by the door, you'll find an out-of-place piece. You'll look for a gold band of pieces, and in the gold band, you'll see an emerald green stone. That represents the birthstone of one of the artist's children. On the left side, same exact spot, looks out of place. There used to be a ruby red stone that represented the same thing for their other child, but that stone fell or was taken off, and it was never replaced. Well, I've heard this many times before, this story, and it's very cool to point out, and you can see an emerald stone there. I'll post about it on Instagram, so check us out at WDW Opinion. You'll see that photo. But our good friends over at Celebrations Magazine, which is a great magazine you got to check out, they've actually debunked this story. It's not true. If anyone tells you it is, they're liars. They don't know what they're talking about. Because in actuality, it wasn't a husband and wife artist group. It was actually a father and his daughter-in-law. So father and daughter-in-law, They did the mosaics. Our friends over at Celebration, they actually were able to contact the daughter-in-law, who's still an artist, who still does mosaics like this, and asked, hey, have you heard this story? And she's like, I might have heard it once or twice. And they were like, well, can you confirm or deny it? She's like, it's absolutely not true. She worked on both sides of it, and she thinks what happened is it was supposed to be identical, both sides. But what really occurred, she thinks it just was either one of the workers put it in by accident, or a piece fell out years later and a cast member just put in another piece thinking, well, this is the only piece we have, that'll do. She has no idea how it occurred like that, but she, being the main artist on it with her father-in-law, she confirmed that this story is not true. So fun fact number 4 is something where you can, if someone tries to tell you that story, you're like, hey, listen, I listen and watch the WDW Opinion podcast, and that story is hogwash, and here's why. And you tell them that story. At the end of the day, I think it's cool that our friends at Celebrations were able to debunk that myth, but I think it's still a cool story, and if it was true, I think it would be even better. But there you go. Myth debunked. Fun fact number 5. Let's make our way into World Showcase. And that's that when they were setting up the countries of World Showcase. Alexa, stop. When they were setting up the showcase areas at World Showcase, when they were picking the pavilions, the American Adventure Pavilion was going to be at the beginning of World Showcase, where Showcase Plaza is right now. So that kind of makes sense if you think about it. You walk from Future World, and the first thing you see is the American Adventure. And it makes more sense because when you look at American Adventure, if it was in that position, to its right, or when you're looking at it, to the right is Canada, to the left is Mexico, our two neighbors in America. That would have made perfect sense. But they thought, you know what? We shouldn't lead off with this, even though we are neighbors to Canada and Mexico. We should play host. America should play host to this kind of permanent World's Fair. So it was put at the back of World Showcase at the exact center and middle area of the showcase. I think I like it better here because you can see it off in the distance. You can see it for all of its grandeur, and you know when we get to American Adventure, we're halfway through. If it was right up front, I think it would have been too much all at once. I like the transition. I like that it's open there. But now, even more so when we think about nighttime spectaculars, Harmonious is coming in the next couple of months. It's going to be a great area to watch those shows. But yeah, originally the plans called for the American Adventure Pavilion to be right at the very beginning of the World Showcase. But no, they're going to play host to all the other countries. So there you go. Continuing with American Adventure, much like the Magic Kingdom, the American Adventure is actually on the second floor. So the Magic Kingdom has those utilidors that, cast members can go through and get to work and things like that. But next time you're in Epcot, when you're walking to American Adventure, you'll notice, there's a slight elevation change in the sidewalk. It gradually looks like you're walking up a hill because you are. And then when you're exiting, you're gradually going down a hill, it's true. And no other place in World Showcase has that. There's no other real hills. And that reason is because the American Adventure is on the second floor. The pavilion, below the pavilion, that's where the magic happens. as you watch the show with all these audio animatronics, you might wonder, how is this possible? How can all these animatronics be on this stage? What's going on? And what occurs is the scenes of the animatronics on the show are actually slid into place at the right time. So it's like this incredibly massive and complex operating system, and it's basically a wheel. So what happens is, it's like, nowadays they have Carvana, which is like the car vending machines, and how it goes up and captures the one car and it slides in and drops down, and then there's your car. It's kind of how American Adventure works. Below the scenes, there's a sort of a turntable that spins with all of the show scenes. And as the show scenes are occurring, it'll spin, and then the next one up will slide out of the wheel. It'll slide into this contraption. The contraption will move up to the stage, and then that scene will begin. It's very complicated. Look it up. If you go to wdwopinion.com/113 for episode 113, I'll try to find some photos or something of it. But just know that when you're walking up that incline into American Adventure and you're walking down, when you're leaving American Adventure, you're actually right above where all those animatronics are living and stuff like that. So it's pretty cool. Fun fact number 7 is kind of a dual fun fact. We got a Liberty Square fun fact as well. On the clock in the American Adventure, you have the big clock tower. Nice clock, great clock. 4 o'clock on the clock face is listed as I. Roman numerals, right? But the real Roman numerals would have been IV. That's 4. I is not 4. IV is 4. Well, in colonial times, that's not what they adhered to. They didn't adhere to IV being 4. They did 4 eyes. That's what 4 was. I don't know why they did it in colonial times. It certainly takes up more area on the clock. But if you go to Liberty Square, that clock tower is exactly the same. It's not IV. It's 4 eyes. Little tidbits like that, just like what we were talking about in Spaceship Earth, really help to define the time and place. Again, I don't know why they used it in colonial America, but that's how it worked. Disney knew that, and they said, you know what? We're going to incorporate that fun fact here. Fun fact number 8, a lot of people love the Morocco Pavilion, and it is incredible, the details of the Morocco Pavilion. You see Tower of Terror in the background, and you know, Tower of Terror was kind of constructed to look a little Moroccan just because it would blend in better with the Morocco Pavilion. But what I want to talk about is more what's occurring in the actual pavilion. The King of Morocco sent artists and designers to get everything right in place. He sent his own people there to make sure that this pavilion was tip-top, was the bee's knees, as it were. He wanted it to be right because the Morocco Pavilion was actually, like all the original pavilions, the countries that were being represented thought of it as a great tourism kind of advertisement. There was actually tourism bureaus there where you could learn more about the country as well, which was very cool. King of Morocco realized this. He's like, that'd be a great way to get more people in. Hey, let's send over our people there to make it as precise as possible. Now, as you walk from Morocco towards the France Pavilion, you will see the pavement changes colors. There's darker pavement there all of a sudden. And what is that? Well, that signifies the Straits of Gibraltar. And you're now crossing from the Atlantic into the Mediterranean. Interesting. But you don't end up in Spain like you would normally if you cross the Straits of Gibraltar. you end up in France. You still end up in Europe, of course, but you don't end up in Spain. What's very funny about this is that Spain was one of the proposed pavilions that never came to be. And that's actually our next fact, because you think the Straits would be perfect place to put the Spain pavilion, right? You cross over Morocco, you go into Spain. Make perfect sense. And then France is next. Cool. In fact, in the early 80s, there was a sign near the Germany pavilion, basically on the other side of World Showcase, that said, future site of the Spain pavilion. So even though we have Morocco and the Straits of Gibraltar, the original intention was to have Spain on the other side of World Showcase, which is very interesting. For fun fact number 9, we build on the World Showcase pavilions that never were. In addition to Spain, Israel, Iran, Venezuela, Costa Rica, the United Arab Emirates, Scandinavia/Denmark, that was going to be one, the Philippines, Switzerland, and Soviet Union were all rumored, or in some cases, even announced by Disney to be pavilions coming to Epcot. But the most elaborate of them all was going to be the Equatorial Africa Pavilion. And this is something that would represent Kenya, Ethiopia, Uganda, and the Congo. In this pavilion, there is going to be a massive 60-foot tall tree as its center point. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? A massive tree near Africa. We might have a lot of that in common with the animal kingdom. But this massive 60-foot tall tree was going to have a tree house, and it was going to be the center point of the attraction. People were going to be able to climb up into the tree house, and they could see animals on the savannah by the watering hole. Still sounds very familiar to Animal Kingdom. But what's crazy about this is that in this Equatorial Africa Pavilion, when you're in this treehouse, you're not actually looking at real animals. No real animals were going to be used. It was all going to be projections and illuminations. Really, really interesting. And John Hench, legendary Disney Imagineer, he was one of the ones working on this. Of course, in the end, we get our giant tree and we get our African savanna where you can see actual animals at the Animal Kingdom. But this was kind of the first iteration of it, which was very interesting. There was going to be much more to this land, though. Disney was so serious about this pavilion that they actually hired Roots author and Pulitzer Prize winner Alex Haley to consult on the project. The second attraction, the first attraction being that giant treehouse, the second attraction in the pavilion, it was going to be a film narrated by Alex Haley. It was all going to be about, Equatorial Africa, much in the same line of like Impressions de France or Circle Vision, Canada, China, all those ones. A third experience was going to be called The Heartbeat of Africa. And it was going to be this big show with musicians playing traditional African music. That would have been insane. There's no pavilion that has that many types of things to do in Epcot. So that would have been the biggest of the World Showcase pavilions by far. And most of these pavilions, when they first came online in the early 80s, they were originally sponsored by countries themselves because, like I said, the countries thought it would be a good marketing opportunity for tourism. Disney approached several countries to help fund this pavilion in particular, but in the 1980s and the 70s, there was so much political upheaval in Africa at this time. It prevented many, many countries from not being able to secure the funds to help pay for these pavilions. And, Disney even framed it as Equatorial Africa. So they went out to a number of countries saying we could all combine forces here, but it just didn't came to be, unfortunately. And of course, they probably needed a lot of money because there were so many experiences occurring. There are currently 11 countries represented in World Showcase. And what's very interesting is there's enough room to actually double the amount of countries in there now. Double. Now, will they ever get 11 more pavilions? I don't think so. But I think we might get one or two new ones here or there eventually. If you go to Google Earth and you type in Epcot, do the satellite images, and you can see how much space is in between each of the current pavilions. So here's hoping we get some more pavilions there soon. Our final fun fact number 10, is all about the never-built World Showcase attractions. Just talked about the never-built World Showcase pavilions. Now we can talk about the attractions. Germany was going to have an attraction called the Rhine River Cruise. It was going to be a slow-moving ride, much like It's a Small World, but you would flow down the Rhine River and see miniature versions of notable German attractions, buildings, locations. They actually started working on this ride, but it was abandoned. If you go into the back of the pavilion, there's an arch on the wall by the entrance to the restaurant Beer Garden. In the arch, there's this painting of a German countryside. That arch was going to be the entrance to the ride. So they went that far to make it, which is pretty interesting. We do have a miniature German town right outside the pavilion, complete with trains that you can look at, but it's no Rhine River cruise. In the UK pavilion, there were plans to have a audio animatronic attraction depicting Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and there were also plans for a Thames River ride where guests could board a long flume and pass by noteworthy sights of London. In Japan, this one would have been very cool. There were also plans for a Mount Fuji roller coaster, which is going to look and feel a lot like the Matterhorn bobsleds at Disneyland. This is really interesting. One of the big sponsors of Epcot overall, and really Disney World overall at the time, was Kodak. When Kodak heard these rumors about a Mount Fuji attraction coming to Epcot, they were not happy because who's their main competitor? Fujifilm. Fujifilm, of course, from Japan, named after Mount Fuji. Kodak was not happy with that, and that probably that and budget constraints probably prevented this attraction from ever being created. Now, there was also discussion in the Japan Pavilion about doing a bullet train attraction, which was going to be very cool. This was going to utilize the Circle Vision 360 screen that you see in Canada Far and Wide, Reflections of China. But the way this attraction was going to work is that you were going to sit in a passenger car in a train, like the famous bullet trains that they have in Japan. But there were going to be oversized windows that you could look out of. It wasn't going to be an actual window. It was going to be a screen. And the screen was going to show the landscapes of Japan. It make you feel like you're looking outside of a real window. There were going to be elements like vibrations and shaking under the seats in the passenger car to make you feel like you were on a real train. Of course, never actually got built. But you know what did get built? Something very, very, very similar that got built by Universal. And that's Universal Orlando's Hogwarts Express, which takes guests back and forth from Hogsmeade to King's Cross at Diagon Alley. And while you're on this train, it actually moves. It's an actual transportation method. But The windows you're looking out of aren't actual windows, they're screens, and you can see the English countryside and some characters from Harry Potter and things like that. So it's not that element we first thought was going to come to the bullet train experience in the Japan Pavilion, but Universal one-upped it and said this is an actual mode of transportation. It'll take you here and there, and it'll be an attraction all along the way. So I think that's kind of cool that we were going to have something at Disney World, or there are talks to, at least in Japan. Never came to be, but I think in a lot of ways it probably turned out a lot better with the Hogwarts Express at Universal, which is very, 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 very cool. Just goes to show you that no matter where or when an idea is abandoned, it sits on a shelf and it can be used by anyone and everyone who knows about it. So there you go. What I want to hear from you guys is which one of these attractions that never came to be, which one would you like to see in the World Showcase? Let me know in the Opinioneers community. You can go over to wdwopinion.com/opinioneers, OPINIONEERS. I'll have a poll in the community where you guys can vote on them. You can share your opinions on them, all sorts of stuff like that. So I don't know. I don't know which one I'd like to see. I think one of the river boats would have been cool. I think the Mount Fuji one would have been cool, but I like the fact that we have Matterhorn in Disneyland, and that's the only place you could see it. I fear it would have been too similar to that in Mount Fuji in Japan, but I don't know. I think the Rhine River one could have been really, really, really cool for sure. These fun facts today, I've accumulated a lot of them in my noggin from years and years and years of talking to people, listening to people, reading about these things. But 3 books that helped me out in particular are The Hidden Magic of Walt Disney World by Susan Venez, The Walt Disney World That Never Was by Christopher E. Smith, and Walt Disney's Epcot Center, Creating the New World of Tomorrow. If you want to check out any of those books, you can get links to all of them on the show notes page. Visit wdwopinion.com/113 to check it out. If you enjoyed today's episode and you are on YouTube, be sure to hit that like button, leave a comment letting me know you enjoyed it, and please subscribe to the channel. For those peeps listening on Apple Podcasts, please be sure to subscribe and rate and review the show on there. I'll be sure to read future reviews on the show as well. If you listen on Spotify, please click that follow button on the show page, as that's going to help us out too. In between episodes, the best way to talk Disney with me is to join the WDW Opinioneers Facebook group. There you can also connect with your fellow Disney fanatics. You can talk about anything you want. You can talk Disney all the time. Join that group by going to wdwopinion.com/opinioneers, OPINIONEERS. And if you like the show, do me a huge favor and share it with someone you think might enjoy it as well. If you got Disney World loving friends, let them know about it and let them listen to the show too. If you are ready to book a vacation to Walt Disney World, and it's a great time to go, we got the 50th anniversary coming up starting on October 1st of this year. I would love to help you plan that next perfect Walt Disney World vacation. As a travel agent with Ear to There Travel, I'll help you find the best deals, answer any questions you have, book dining reservations for you, and I'll be an advocate for you, someone you can turn to and ask questions of, ask for advice, all that. The best part about this is that my services are 100% free to use. Doesn't cost you a dime. You can reach out to me at Connor, CONOR, at eartotheretravel.com, and I can help you book a trip. You can also head over to wdwopinion.com/113 to learn how to book a trip that way as well. And of course, if there is ever anything I could ever do to help you out, I am more than happy to try and do so. just reach out to me at Connor, CONOR, at WDWOpinion.com. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to answer any questions you have. That's going to do it for me this week. If you liked what you heard today, then you've been listening to the WDW Opinion Podcast. If by chance you didn't like what you heard, then you've been listening to the Lazarus Heist. Sounds interesting. Sounds very interesting. I've been Connor Brown, and until next time, keep LTD, living the dream, and I'll see you real soon.